All right, welcome to Customer Service Trends to Watch in 2015. So my name is Jeff Toister. I'm hosting the webinar today. And up here on the screen, some ways to get a hold of me if you'd like to keep in touch. The bottom one, if anyone's on, not the bottom one, but the second from the bottom, if anyone's on Twitter, we'll respond to questions within the webinar. But if you have additional comments, want to keep the conversation going on Twitter, you can reach me at Toister. And then, of course, we also have the old school, the phone number. That still works. I still use that. So a little bit about me, I'm a consultant. My specialty is helping customer service teams unlock their hidden potential. A lot of that involves training, so I'm a lifelong trainer and also an author. I wrote a book called Service Failure, and it explores reasons that employees struggle with customer service, hidden obstacles to outstanding service. So one thing that I'm going to do, if you are on the webinar, at the end of the webinar today, I'm going to give away a signed copy of my book, Must Be Present to Win. But just another way to entice you to stick around. We'll also try to make this really interactive and give you plenty of opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about some of the trends that I'm going to share. Now, I'm going to be careful and say these aren't the trends. I think these are some of the trends to look for. And in particular, what I'm trying to share with folks today are trends that maybe aren't on the radar for some other people. So maybe they're a little bit surprising, counterintuitive perhaps. That's part of the fun. All right, so that's our agenda today, 5 trends to watch. We'll do a little Q&A towards the end. And also towards the end of the webinar, I'll give you a chance to perhaps win a copy of my book, Service Failure. All right. So before we go any further, we're going to launch another poll. So bear with me just a moment. It's going to take a moment to show up on your screen. We want to see what you think. So the question before you is, what's the biggest cause of service failures in your organization? So our options are it's a poor product or service. In other words, there's something broken. It's customer service employees. Maybe it's an error they make, a bad attitude. It's a customer, something else, or maybe you don't know or you're not sure. So take just a moment. Best guess, what's the leading cause of service failures in your organization? All right, and thanks, Levi. You certainly can use the chat box to add some commentary to this or to add some different things that are not part of this poll. So it's a pretty general poll. So we've got, wow, I've got a lot of other, the culture of not my job, which I think we can bring back to the employee, but not entirely. There's a lot of other factors involved there. Okay, very cool. Maybe this poll is too general. So a lot of people are saying other, about 26% right now saying employee. Very few people saying it's a poor product or service. Now that's very interesting. Okay, I'm going to leave it open for just a few more seconds. But other is a big category. All right, so interesting too about a note about surveys, which, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about a little bit about later. Surveys, you come up with categories that you think are important, but often you might miss something. So you look at this other category here. This is where the majority of you are responding. So obviously, the reasons you're thinking are the cause of poor service are a little different than the reasons I imagined you might respond when I created this poll. So definitely an interesting look at the limitations of surveys and polling. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now, but this is really, I think, kind of fascinating that there's all these other factors that kind of get in the way. So what does that bring us? Let's we'll hide the poll now, and let's look at trends. So trend number 1, I'm really surprised by the poll results because on a macro level, research shows that the number 1 cause of service failures is what we call broken systems. And broken systems are poor product or service, but they probably tie into that other category. And some of you said this, like Lynn, disparate systems and training, or Candace talking about the culture issue. In other words, there's things that just don't work together. Even if employees are trying to do their jobs, there's other things that get in the way. So it's interesting to look at these systems, and the companies that get really smart, the thing that they're going to focus on, I think even more in 2015, is making it easier for employees to provide outstanding service. You know, a lot of times we start when clients approach me and say, I want to improve service, so let's train my employees. You know, most of you, so we go back to the poll, most of you are saying, it's not the employee's fault when it comes to bad service. They have a role to play, but it's not really their fault. It's something else. And so one of the trends I think we're going to see more and more of is companies getting really smart about fixing that something else. So that training, it's still important, but it's a smaller piece of the overall puzzle. So I want to share something interesting. We kind of move to an example here, which is Comcast. And maybe you heard about this. This happened last summer. If you didn't hear the story with Comcast, what happened was a customer, his name was Ryan Block, and he was trying to cancel his Comcast service, and he was having such a hard time. About halfway through the call, he started recording it. And he eventually posted the recording online, and it went viral because it was just such a horrible call. And it was very interesting to me. I'll later on in the webinar, I'll post a link where you can check out the blog. But I wrote a post about how this employee really should be Employee of the Month at Comcast. Comcast initially blamed the individual employee, but if you really think about it, it was a broken system that caused this problem. And you look at how Comcast handles cancellations. If you go to their website, you can find anything you need about Comcast, how to sign up, how to buy more stuff. What you can't find is how to cancel your service, at least 6 months ago. If you look at incentives for these employees, they're incentivized to retain customers. If they fall between a certain level, they lose pay. Money comes out of their pocket. Their goal, their whole job description is being able to keep people and avoid losing customers. So if you look at that whole system, of course an employee is going to do whatever they can, even to the extreme of trying to keep an employee. So Megan, thanks for sharing that story. So we've got a link there. You can read more about the story itself, and a little bit later on I'll share my own blog post kind of analyzing this. But here's a great example of it's not about employee training, which Comcast kind of said was the culprit. It's more about putting your employees in the right position to be successful. So that's trend number one. Fixing broken systems, we've got to make it easy for our employees to serve your customers at a very high level. Now let's move on to the second trend. The second trend, it seems almost obvious, but a lot of companies don't focus here. And the trend is preventing service failures. So it's a kind of an interesting analysis. This came from the Corporate Executive Board, and I'll give you a link to this a little bit later at the end of the webinar. But it's a book called The Effortless Experience. And I was introduced to some of these concepts at an ICMI conference last year. And look at this stat. What this is telling us, let me see if I can kind of show you, is that great service does have some impact on loyalty. But poor service has a much, much bigger impact on loyalty. In other words, a service failure is going to cause almost 4 times as much damage as one of those amazing kind of hero moments in customer service. So what the stats are telling us is that, hey, it's great to try to delight your customers, but it's more important to prevent something from going wrong. Let me give you an example, and hopefully this applies to a lot of you or you can relate to this. If you go out to a restaurant and you have a fantastic meal and there's great service, but you're in the midst of eating your steak and you find like a big clump of hair or something, that ruins the entire experience. It doesn't really matter what else they do at that point. That's just going to gross you out. You're done eating. You don't want to be there anymore. And so that's kind of a small example of that service failure can cancel out every other good thing that restaurant did. Now again, if they delight you in other ways and that never happens, then that certainly counts. But what's more important than anything else is preventing these types of service failures. So let me give you an example. And in a moment, I want to get your input on this. I attended a conference, actually spoke at a conference, CRM Evolution. And this is no fault of the conference organizers, but the hotel where it was hosted. This is how they set up my breakout room. You may notice a small problem. And it was amazing how many different people that work for the hotel walked by this, we call it the pillar of failure after a while, because it was like this room was set up like this for 3 days. This is a service failure that impacted the experience of conference goers. It impacted the experience of people attending my sessions. So my question to you, this is obvious. This shouldn't happen. We all know that. How do you think people could miss this? How do you think hotel associates could miss this? How could this actually happen? So let me be quiet for a moment. In the chat box, if you'd like, send me your ideas. And if you share an idea, or even if you don't, take a look at what other people are saying. I think there's some great suggestions here. Um, Let me echo what a few people are saying. Pete, they didn't care, absolutely, and they were focused on setting up the room. In other words, they weren't looking at the customer's experience. They were looking at, well, who else? Someone else put this. Candace, I was told to put 25 seats in the room. There was a little map, and it said these seats go here, and I'm going to. In their mind, they're probably doing their job. Christine, absolutely not seeing it from the customer's perspective. So think about this. This is obvious, and this is the challenge with service failures: is they're often very, very obvious to the customer. In this case, the people attending the conference. But I counted it. There was at least 5 people, 5 hotel associates that touched this, and any one of them could have said, "Whoa, this is a problem. We have to do something to fix it. At the very least, move this table from this pillar and set up the room in a different way." So there's a lot of challenges to this, but these things still happen. So my kind of challenge to you, if you will, is we need to prevent service failures, and getting it right is more powerful than delighting our customers. But to do that, I think we have to enable our employees to see these pillars. And we have to be, as leaders, we have to be on the lookout for pillars ourselves. In other words, where are these pillars of failure in our organization? And as you can see from this example, you have to be able to step back and look at it from your customer's shoes and make it everyone's responsibility to get it right. That's unfortunately why it so often happens where these things exist in so many organizations, because for all the reasons that you identified, people aren't looking at those types of things. All right, so that's trend number 2. I think the smart companies are going to do more and more just to fix problems, prevent problems from even happening in the first place, because they have so much more of an impact on customer loyalty than doing something to delight your customers. All right, let's go to the third trend. The third trend is what we're going to call proactive social care. And I'm going to launch another poll here. Social care, we're talking about taking care of your customers on social media. So Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest. I mean, there's a lot of different places now where you can take care of your customers. And I'm going to launch a poll in just a moment. I want to find out how many of you participating today currently serve your customers via social media in some way, even if it's just a little bit. So I'll give you a moment to fill that out. By the way, while you're doing this, there was I saw an article that came out, I think last week. It was a survey conducted by Freshdesk. And a large portion of some of the top brands are not responding to their customers on social media. And they're completely ignoring them, which is fascinating to me. In this day and age, in 2015, we're still talking about social media in some ways being in its infancy when it comes to customer care. But there you go. All right, so we're looking at the poll. The vast majority of us are serving customers via social media. If you answered no, one of the things to kind of consider is whether your customers are talking about you on social media. In other words, they're coming to social media for service or to kind of spout about something. So whether or not you're addressing that is kind of a different issue than whether or not your customers are present on social media and are looking for help on social media. So let's go to this proactive social care thing then. So I'm going to end the poll now. Big majority of us are using social media, 90% now. Wow. Let's talk about what we can do with that. So I did a survey, not a survey, but I actually dove into Twitter and I examined a number of different hashtags that people used and looked at it from several different angles. My question is, what specifically do angry customers tweet about? And what I thought was really, really interesting was it wasn't what I thought it would be. There was your obvious, okay, I don't like this product or this service or whatever it is. But the number one reason, by a fair margin, was they were waiting. In other words, they were waiting. They had some sort of problem, and they were waiting for the company to resolve it. And the third response was also kind of interesting, which they had tried to contact the company via Twitter or via another channel, email, in person, via the phone, and the company was supposed to get back to them, and they hadn't yet, and so they were being impatient, and they tweeted about it, which kind of goes back to waiting. I separated those. There's non-specific complaints, but then rude employees, that was only 10% of what people tweeted about. So when we think about this from this perspective, what this data is really telling us is that for the most part, Twitter is a second channel. There are a few companies out there that are proactively using social media as a first point of contact, a first channel for communication. But for many of our customers, Twitter is where they go when they can't solve their problem some other way. They've talked to one of your employees face to face. They've called one of your employees. They've chatted. They've done something else. It hasn't worked, and so now they go to Twitter and complain about it. Um, so what are we going to do about that? If we don't want people sending angry tweets about our organization, I think we need to be a little bit more proactive. And here's where it gets really kind of interesting. So there was there's an organization called Execs in the Know, and they did give us one encouraging trend for 2014. Their new data isn't out yet, but in 2013, only 10% of organizations had customer service taking part with some degree of ownership in social media. That's jumped up to 36% last year. I think it's going to get even higher. So sometimes the problem is social media resides in marketing or it resides in PR. But now more of us in the customer service space are getting a chance to get our hands on social media. So I think what we're going to see, and hopefully some of your organizations are going to be able to do this, is really two things. One I've identified here: provide consistent service across all channels. In other words, if you're doing a good job in other channels, you'll get far fewer angry tweets. The data's showing that. But the second thing is, if you start seeing tweets about people waiting or people not getting a response, some really smart organizations are saying, hey, that's an indicator, a leading indicator. A few people might be tweeting this, but a lot of people might be experiencing this. We better go fix that problem. And so that's, again, another example of looking at, say, Twitter and being proactive about what that information is telling you. Okay, so we've covered 3 trends so far. I'm going to go to the fourth trend, which is fewer surveys. And I imagine all of us have taken a survey, or at least we've been invited to take a survey recently. We can't escape it, right? You go to a website, something pops up. Take our survey. You go to a store. Please take our survey. It's nonstop. And trends are showing that it's getting even higher and higher. In fact, we have this term. This is not a new term. You may have heard of this, called survey fatigue. 7 billion surveys a year. That's a 2010 number. I'm looking for an updated study. Haven't seen one yet. If you have one, let me know. But so it's probably, is it safe to say that that's doubled, with the advent of receipt-based surveys? Or now, have you seen this where you go to a store and right in front of the register there's a QR code, IVR-based surveys for contact centers. So we get bombarded with surveys. Not only that, but the surveys take too long. I mean, there's surveys out there that are 100 questions long. I got an oil change the other day. I got a 36-question survey about my oil change. A bit much. And here's the biggest, scariest part. Gartner did a study, and they found out that even though most companies survey their customers, only 10% actually use that data to improve customer service. In other words, the dirty secret, I hope this doesn't apply to you, but the odds are it applies to some of these people participating in the webinar today. The dirty secret is we're surveying our customers, and there's no good reason for it. We're not doing anything besides perhaps reporting the numbers, but we're not actually using the survey data to improve customer service. So surveys are kind of a broken tool, if you will. We're not using them properly. So what I think is going to happen, it's going to start happening more and more this year, and I think in the next few years it's going to be a big deal, is companies are going to say, you know what, customers are tired of filling out surveys. If we can find out useful information through another means, we don't need to bother them, and we can probably get more accurate data, and we can actually do something with it. So I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to be quiet for just a moment. Let me ask you, I've given you some examples here, but what would be some specific examples of ways you could get information that you'd normally get in a survey, but get that same information without actually bothering your customers with a survey? What are some survey alternatives? So let me give you a moment to respond via chat. And as you're typing, take a look at what some of the other folks are saying as well. So obviously have some contact center folks participating today, so listening to recorded calls. Um, Lots of great information. And now if you have the capability to kind of organize some of the data, then you can really identify trends that go through calls without having to ask your customers directly. You don't have to bother them with that. Daniela, nice. Yeah, asking your customer support representatives. They interact with customers all the time. So what are your customers telling us? What's the biggest problem that you're hearing? What are people seem really angry about? What's the most challenging situation we face? And there's a lot of questions that your customer support reps can tell you just from their direct experience. It's not necessarily statistically perfect, but it's good stuff that we can take advantage of. What else do we have? Yeah, I mean a lot of analytics. So I think the key here is there's lots of information that we already have access to. So some of the examples we have up here, if your customers are reviewing you via Yelp, TripAdvisor, et cetera, you already have a survey that's being done. Yes, it's public, but you can use that data to improve service. And those sites often have built-in tools where you can interact with the customers who are writing those surveys. Social media monitoring, so seeing what people are saying about you on Facebook, Twitter, et cetera. Web alerts, if you're not familiar with those, it's like Google Alerts. There's a lot of other options as well where you can get automatically updated anytime someone's talking about your product, service, company. Data mining, as a lot of you have talked about. Direct feedback, as a lot of you have talked about. Yeah, absolutely. Secret shoppers. So there's tons of different ways to gather information. And so I think we're going to see that as a trend. A little less surveying and a lot more action, to paraphrase Elvis. Surveys, I think they're a great tool, but it's almost a crime, really, if we're going to survey customers and not do anything with it. I do a lot of surveys. I work with my clients on a lot of surveys, but let's stop surveying customers until we're ready to use that data. And in the meantime, let's think carefully about the questions we ask. A lot of times surveys are just far too long, and they ask you questions that they could easily find without asking the customer to respond to it via survey. So I think we're going to see that as a trend for at least some of the elite companies going forward. They're still going to know a lot about their customers, but they're not going to rely on their customers to respond to a survey to get that information. Okay, last of the 5 trends. We're going to talk about the real employee motivation. It's interesting to me because this is not something that's new data, but I think it's new and I'm starting to hear more companies talk about it, and that's what motivates employees. Now, it used to be if an employee needed to be motivated, what we would do is we'd come up with some sort of incentive or some sort of punishment, so the old carrot and stick. And when we're talking about customer service employees, there's so much data out there that says this doesn't work. So what does work? What really motivates employees? It's this concept of engagement. And we're still talking about engagement, but a lot of companies still haven't figured this out. So let's talk about it on a high level, and then we'll drill down to some of the specifics. So the latest data from Gallup, one of the big companies that measure this sort of thing, is that 70% of workers in the US are non-engaged, which means they are either kind of indifferent or they're actively disengaged. What's interesting is organizations with high engagement levels, customer satisfaction increases 12%. Now that's huge. If you do any kind of customer satisfaction surveying, a 12% jump is big. That's game changing. So what are these components? Well, this is a book that came out a while ago by Daniel Pink called Drive. And at the end of the webinar, I'll give you a link where you can find it on Amazon. What's fascinating about this book is he really compiled a lot of research that was already out there and found that when it comes to employees in professions like customer service, so he was separating from like factory workers that are really just using their hands for kind of manual tasks. When you're talking about knowledge workers like customer service, there are really 3 things that it comes down to in terms of employees being motivated, and it's not incentives. He's actually found great research to say that incentives, those rewards, if you will, they can in some ways hurt performance. But look at these 3 things and compare them to what we already know about customer service: autonomy. In customer service, we often call that empowerment. In other words, employees have the ability to fix problems. They don't have to come to their manager. They don't have to ask permission. They know I can make this happen. That's autonomy. Mastery. One of the things that demotivates employees in customer service, and we've probably all been there, is not being able to solve a problem because I didn't know the information, I don't have the tools, I don't have the resources, uh, I'm not able to do it. When employees feel like they can take care of their customer, make their customers happy, they've mastered that process. They're able to use their input to make processes and systems even better. That's so motivational. And for those of you that have tried this with your involving your employees in problem solving, they love it. And the last piece is purpose. Too often we don't stop and define what does outstanding service look like? What is our goal each time we try to serve our customers? And this is an important element of service because if we haven't defined purpose, then everything we do becomes kind of task-based. So I like to call this a customer service vision. And it's amazing. You look at the companies that have outstanding service, there's a really good chance that they're really crystal clear on autonomy, mastery, and purpose. They're not relying on incentives to get employees to do things. Because if you think about it, incentives basically saying, you know, you wouldn't normally want to do this, so we're going to kind of give you a little something extra to make it a bit more palatable. There's something fundamentally flawed with that. If we can create an environment where we have the right people, we give them the autonomy, the mastery, and purpose to naturally want to serve customers at a high level, you get so much better results. So I think what we're seeing is this trend in employee motivation is that the really smart companies are getting this. And I'm saying here more Southwest Air and less Korean Airlines. Southwest Airlines, you've probably all heard, are legendary for customer service. All of you may not have heard, maybe you have, it was in the news about a month ago, where Korean Airlines, an executive with Korean Airlines, former executive, I should say now, lost her mind on a flight. The flight was had just pulled away from the gate, and she apparently was served macadamia nuts incorrectly. And not only did she lose her mind, she verbally berated a couple of members of the cabin crew, and according to witnesses, physically assaulted the crew chief. Had the plane turn around, come back to the gate so that the crew chief could be kicked off the plane. All this over a bag of nuts. And so imagine the impact on the customer, but who wants to work for somebody like that? Now, in fairness to Korean Airlines, they responded pretty quickly. This person resigned. But still, that's the kind of organization where you get in trouble if you do it wrong or you get an incentive to do it right. Your employees aren't going to be motivated. Southwest Airlines, on the other hand, one of the reasons they're so legendary is they spend so much time creating this environment where their employees feel like they can go to work every day and be great. So again, towards the end of the webinar, I'll give you a link where you can check out that book. But as Candace wrote, it's a fabulous book. It's an easy read, but I found it's such a great way to unlock employee motivation. So look at that. We went through this pretty fast. 5 trends to watch for 2015. We're going to move to Q&A for just a moment. I'll give you a few minutes to, if there are any questions you want to ask me about any of the trends. And then we'll do a drawing for service failure, so you get a chance to win that. You must be present to win. And we will, finally, I'll post some links for you to get to some of these books that I talked about and also some of the blog posts. All right, so if you have some questions about some of the specific trends, let's see if I've put them up here. No, I haven't. Okay, then fire away. Rita's asking, what's trend number 1? So trend number 1 was the leading cause of service failures. So if you have some other questions, type away. Let me see if I can come back to that particular screen here. Leading causes, here we go. Trend number 1, fixing broken systems. In other words, making it easy for employees to serve. One of the biggest challenges that we're finding is bad customer service isn't the fault of the employee. It's the fault of some sort of broken system. So if you can fix what's ailing that, you can improve customer service. All right. So I see a few people are typing. Let me pause for just a moment. Again, if you have questions about what we've covered today, then please share. An excellent point, Candace. Yeah, systems, it's kind of everything working holistically together. So you're right, not just the tools, processes, policies. I heard a story the other day from a customer where um, she had talked about 5 different people to resolve a very simple problem. And the issue was that none of those 5 people had the ability to solve the problem. They always had to send the problem to somebody else, but that was sending it to a black hole, which meant she had to then contact the company again. So the employees themselves, she was saying, well, these are really nice employees. They have the right attitude. They're trying to help, but they can't do anything about it. And that's really difficult. All right. Let me give you just another moment. I feel like, wow, I either answered all the questions you have or you're still thinking about it, and that's all right. So let me give you just another moment. So Pete, excellent question about Southwest Airlines. So the short answer about them is that they really started their airline from the beginning with a very specific culture. And that's evolved over time, but I think they're one of the few companies that's been very conscious about stewarding their culture. So there's a book, if you haven't checked it out, it's called Nuts, and it's really about the Southwest Airlines story. It's probably about 10 or so years old now. It was written by Herb Kelleher, who was the CEO and founder of Southwest Airlines at the time. But having done some research and talked to some folks that actually work there, what's interesting is, culture is not what we say. Culture is what we ultimately do. And for the most part, if you interact with Southwest Airlines, if you know a little bit about their culture and then you observe their employees, there's a match. Often companies run afoul of culture when their stated culture isn't a match with people's actions. So I'll give you a great example. For those of you that are on the western part of the United States, you might be familiar with In-N-Out Burger. Amazing. They have a cult following. Highly recommend going there. In-N-Out's famous not only for their burgers, but their customer service. And their culture was, from the very beginning, built around 3 words: quality, consistency, and courtesy. Now, quality, cleanliness, and courtesy. Now, those words, if you go into an In-N-Out today, which I, again, highly recommend, it's a good idea for all of us. We should just organize a trip and all go. If you go into an In-N-Out today, you will see evidence of all 3 of those words. Now, here's a little bit of interesting trivia for you, is that another organization that started with those same 3 words is McDonald's. Go into McDonald's today, good chance you will not see evidence, at least as strong, of those same 3 words as you did In-N-Out. Because the reality is McDonald's was always about growth and marketing, franchising, etc. So it's interesting to see the difference in not just stated culture, but what we actually do. All right, let's see if we'll give just another moment for any additional questions, and we'll do a drawing for service failure, and I'll launch those links for you. And I will stick around since we're a little bit early. We had scheduled to go until 11. I'll stick around if I don't get a chance to answer something that comes up. Keep typing, and then we'll respond to that. All right, so I'm going to do. I know a few people are typing away. Cool, thanks for that, Candace. Yeah, made to stick in it. Another excellent book. Where are we? Here we go. We're going to do a drawing for service failure. So drum roll, please. Must be present to win. And this is a random drawing, so I have to go through. I picked a number and then just kind of look through the list of participants. All right, so it looks like our winner today is Ellen DeLeo. So Ellen, congratulations. The only thing I'll need from you is an address on where to send it, and I'm going to put my email address here so you can just email it to me. If you email me your address, I will be happy to mail you a signed copy of Service Failure. So congratulations, and I hope you enjoy it. All right. Oh, perfect. So physical address, unless you'd prefer a digital copy, I can send you a digital copy. But if you email me your physical address, then I can mail you a signed copy. I still haven't figured out how to sign digital copies. If someone invents that app, I think you will help all of us. All right, so I promised you some additional resources. Let's see. Hang on just a moment. Let me launch those. All right, here we go. So the way this little screen here works is I've got a few books. So if you're not Ellen, you did not win. You're still a winner in my book, but you can purchase Service Failure. A couple other books I mentioned: The Effortless Experience and Drive, and then a couple of blog posts, one on contact center quiet rooms, another blog post on customer service survey alternatives. So if you want to check any of those out, just click on the link, and then in the bottom of that box will say browse to, and you just click on browse to again, and it will launch another window where you can check those out. So I'll leave that up here for the rest of the Q&A. And that's going to conclude our webinar today. If you would like to ask me any additional questions, I'm not going to fly off and shut things down. We've got plenty of time. But thank you all for participating. It's a great group, lots of great input. I will be probably towards the end of the day sending everyone a link to the recording as well. So you get a chance to review it, and you can also share it with any of your colleagues who may have missed. All right. So thanks, everybody. And again, if you have questions, I'm going to stick around and answer them. So let me take a look at. So Lynn, it's interesting. So you're looking at trying to implement some of those concepts from Daniel Pink's book. I'd definitely start by reading through it. I've got a blog post here. If you bear with me just a moment, I've got a blog post that's on that very topic, and I'm jumping over to my website so I can pull it up. So bear with me just a moment. Sorry about this. It's a great question. So let's see if I can get this to, here we go. All right, let me put a link in here. All right, so there's a, Lynn, there's a blog post on that goes a little bit deeper. But I think some of the keys are, so if you separate them into customer service concepts, really the most important one is purpose and having a clear, what I call customer service vision. So I'm going to give you another link here. This link will take you to a worksheet where you can try to create your own. It's something that I've been doing a lot with my clients lately, is helping them establish this purpose. And that's some sort of statement, the simpler the better, that says, this is what we're all about. If you'd like, is Jeremy still on here? Jeremy Watkins on the, Jeremy Watkins works for phone.com. Hopefully he's still tuned in. I see that he's signed in. He's done a great job with his team. They call it awesome customer service, but they have, they've really defined this. So if you go to, hopefully I'll get this right, Jeremy, unless you have a, oops, it doesn't show up as a link unless I put the www. I'm going to put Jeremy's blog, because Jeremy has an awesome blog where he talks about their customer service journey at phone.com. All right, so Lynn, if you check out communicatebetterblog.com and look for some of the posts that Jeremy's written about awesome customer service, so they've defined purpose and made it really clear with aligning everything they're doing with that purpose. So then we go to the next one is, I mean, I don't know if there's a particular order here, but autonomy is empowerment. So empowering your employees to achieve that purpose. And then mastery is, that's the continuous development, making the focus of your conversations with your employees all about getting better and better and involving them in solving problems. And, you know, that's kind of a basic overview, but if you can do that, it's an amazing what you can do to transform your team. Even if they're good already, you can take things to the next level. Awesome, Jeremy. I appreciate having you on the webinar today and sharing those. Cool. All right. Did I miss any other questions? Is there anything else that you wanted to ask while we're here? And by the way, just a shameless plug, check out Jeremy's blog, because it's fantastic. It's, you get people like me, and I spend my time talking to other people and doing research. And then you get people like Jeremy, and in his blog, he doesn't really pull any punches. It's really about the things they're doing well and the things they're learning from as well. So it's always been a great resource for me to go to. So I like that blog, communicatebetterblog.com. Cool. All right. Well, if there aren't any additional questions, then we will shut this part of the webinar down as well. But thank you all again for participating. Be on the lookout for that recording. And if you do have any other questions that come up, let me put my email address here once again. Let me know how I can help you. You know, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is working with customer service teams that are good already, but helping them unlock their hidden potential to take things to that next level. So ideas, resources, questions, send them my way. Let's continue the conversation. So thanks again, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.